So welcome back to Btw Solutions, and today we're going to talk about CO2 indoors. I have a little CO2 meter. It's between 730 and 740 ppms, which is an average in a household. So one of the things that happens when you live inside a house, especially with people and animals, is we breathe out carbon, and plants love carbon. It's one of the products that they actually need to bulk up, because most of the mass of a plant is actually carbon and water. But the difference between months is actually noticeable. So 1 month it's maybe between 450 and 550 ppm. Next month it's maybe between 750 and 1000 ppm. And the month following it's between 1000 and 1500 ppm. So there is a noticeable difference in growth and development of plants. And for the people that grow cannabis, it's one of the most annoying and noticeable things, because they get an uneven growth month after month after month. Some months it will produce a lot of product, next month it's a couple of kilos less. And it's all because the amount of CO2 is month over month completely different. And also area from area, it's completely different. So when you live in an urban area, it's actually way higher than when you live in a forest or in an area where there's a lot of trees or nature. Because nature scrubs CO2, but it makes a lot of difference in growth and development, especially with plants. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the amount of lights and the amount of CO2 in the air dictates how much fertilizer and water the plants can absorb. So one of the things that we see a lot, especially with beginners, but also with experts in the field, is that they are using fertilizers, but they don't adjust for the amount of CO2 or for the environment where the plants are growing in. I know for a fact that a lot of people don't realize this, but the difference between 450 ppm indoors and say 750 or 1000 ppm indoors can make a difference between 200 and 250 grams more product per square meter. And that's actually a lot. And the reason is pretty simple. Plants can absorb more fertilizer, can absorb more water, can absorb more sunlight. So there is a more efficient way of photosynthesis, and therefore produce more product per square meter. When you grow in a grow tent, not this type of tent, this propagator, but in a big grow tent, it's actually a big problem, because the plants are absorbing so much CO2 that the levels drop and the plants stop growing, even when you grow indoors, because most of the times the flaps are closed and there is no proper circulation in a tent. And yes, I know, sometimes they have fans and an exhaust and all that stuff, but I've seen many people that just close off the system because of the smell and all that. But yeah, when there's not enough CO2 in a grow tent, those little plants, they don't develop at all. And this is also a funny thing to know. Decomposing materials like potting soil or plant matter actually produces CO2, and a lot of it. So the reason why I'm talking about CO2, carbon dioxide, it's pretty simple. We get a lot of customers from other fertilizer brands, and the reason is we do a personalized advice, and we see a lot of times that people are using a certain brand and need to use 2 times the amount of fertilizer that's recommended. So instead of using 1 or 2 grams per liter, they need to use 3 or 4 grams per liter. And that's actually a pretty clear sign that there's something wrong with the amount of CO2 or with the amount of light, or actually pH level of the soil. But most of the time it's CO2 and light. And because our advice is customized per person, we get always the same compliment. It's that with our fertilizer, so it's fertilizer from Btw Solutions, we get a lot more product and we get a better result overall. And yes, Btw Solutions is a fertilizer company, but in order to work with our fertilizers, we do the complete set. We check the air, we check the environment, we check the soil, we check the water, and we fix a certain product to it in a certain range to get the optimum result. And because there is a big difference month over month over month in amount of CO2, especially in the winter months when the CO2 level sometimes is higher indoors because most people are indoors then. Well, when you grow indoors in the winter months, people see a little bit more and better results. But in the summer months, when people are more outside, they see a little bit of a drop in end product. And a lot of folks are complaining then, well, in that month I had 1.5 kilos, and a month later or 8 weeks later I only produce, say, 800 grams, and it's due to fertilizer, it's due to water, it's due to bleach, it's due to chlorine, whatever. And they don't really check the CO2 levels, because the amount of CO2 makes a big difference in the amount of end product. So at NutriGrow Solutions we actually have a modeling program. It's specifically designed for NutriGrow Solutions, and it takes the amount of fertilizer, it takes the amount of CO2 in the air, it takes the amount of light per square meter, so in ppfd, par or micromole, and it calculates the amount per square meter of produce that it's capable of producing. And we're between 3 and 7% of accuracy. Obviously, because there are a lot of species, especially in sativas and indicas, there's not really a fixed point in exact amount of produce per square meter, but you can get very close to it, and you can produce upwards to sometimes a couple of kilos per square meter. It determines the amount of light, the amount of fertilizer, the amount of water that the plants can absorb, and the amount of carbon that the plants can absorb from the air. So one of our customers is a big grower in Germany, and the grass scene over there is pretty new, but obviously when you live alongside Holland and all that stuff, people know how to grow cannabis. But he was using liquid-based fertilizers from 3 different companies in Holland, the big ones, but he always had the same problem. One month it was producing a lot, the other months it was producing not that much, and in the winter period he was producing a lot, in the summer months he was not producing at all. And he switched around the fertilizers, he called the companies, and every time they were saying you need to switch your fertilizer, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to use additives. And that's pretty fine if you want to sell stuff, but when the technology, your fertilizer, doesn't match the environment, it's not going to produce. So he switched to our technologies. So these are the Pro line, which is for professional use only. And these are for people that just want to introduce fertilizer and don't want to work for 2 to 3 months. So this is pretty simple, and he still uses this stuff, by the way, but for the most part, for the most plants, he uses the Pro line. But as I've been explaining for the last, I don't know, couple of minutes, maybe even half an hour, fertilizer and the technology around it can only do so much. If the environment is not stable, it's gonna produce 1 month, I don't know, 1.5 kilos, and 8 weeks later it's producing only 400 grams. So you need to do something about the environment to let the fertilizer work. And obviously when, I don't know, between 50 and 60% of the plant mass is carbon, yeah, creating a stable environment makes a lot of difference. So he's using our technology, so our system. It's based on Home Assistant. It's actually pretty simple. And he's using an injection system for his greenhouse, and for the plants that are growing outside he's using our Easy Grow system, because he don't want to introduce fertilizer each week. And it actually works, because he's consistent all the way. He doesn't have any problems, no longer those annoying testing protocols and all that stuff. So he's very happy, and he's pretty annoyed right now, and that's why I'm telling the story. He worked with 4 different fertilizer companies, the big ones in Holland, and they all were recommending him to use a different supplement or a different type of fertilizer, and yeah, they didn't test anything. And I don't know how people do this, and why people don't test the environment or the soil or the water or the CO2 levels or the pollutants. But if you want to produce consistently, Yeah, check your CO2, check your water, check the environment, then check the fertilizers. And most time you get a stable result all the time. And 9 times out of 10, when you stabilize the environment and match your fertilizer to the environment and to the plants, you get a stable result all the time, every time. So when a customer calls us and says we have a mixed result, 1 month we have this product and it produces so much, and next month we have this problem and it only produces so much, we know for a fact that's not about fertilizer, it's about the environment. The reason is fertilizers are consistent, especially ours, because it's tested 4 times before we sell it to the customer. The environment, nobody knows what it's going to do tomorrow.